Hi, everybody. Chris Pies here with another PCA Sim Racing Classroom for Season 13. This is a new chance to learn a new track. A relatively new addition to iRacing is Algarve Circuit in Portugal, otherwise known as Portimao elsewhere. And it is a track that is, in my opinion, one of the better ones in iRacing. If you can drive Algarve well, you can probably drive most tracks well. It has undulation, it has tight corners, it has long sweepers, and probably the most characteristic thing is turning while braking and managing trying to get your car to do two things at once. And we'll go over all that when we do the track walk. We're just coming off the last round one of races at Daytona. So I think everybody's probably Daytona'd out between the team race, the sprint races, and then anybody that participated in the iRacing 24. So I think we can park Daytona for a year. That'll be nice for everybody at this point. But it's good to go to Algarve, which is almost the polar opposite of Daytona, if you could ever get that way. One thing I want to note is, as you guys know, I probably have heard me say I like using VRS for data analysis and such. Something I just noticed right now when I pulled up my VRS on my other monitor so I can use some telemetry when I do the track walk is, I don't know when they did this, but they just have done it recently. VRS apparently has an overlay of the track now. It used to just kind of be a line, not the track itself. So you can actually now see the racing line on the track. Pretty cool, in my opinion. Something that I had wished they had been doing for a while, but now it's here. So, hey, there you go. So, like, you can actually see the racing line I am taking during the lap that I am going to show you guys. And then I'm guessing if you take another lap and overlay it, you can see where mine is versus yours or anybody else you compare. And then you can go to the full track and see it, and it's kind of small, so it's hard to see. But the fact that you can take sectors, you can kind of see the racing line from a bird's eye view right down on the ground. That's pretty darn cool, frankly. So maybe we'll take a look at that as we go. But in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and load up the replay that I just did. I like to think of Algarve as a little bit of coda on the side of a hill. A couple of things that you, like, as I mentioned just before, you need to be comfortable with doing multiple things, multiple inputs in the car, specifically braking and turning at the same time. You know that if we're going down a straightaway and we go into a really hard braking zone, think the hairpin at Sebring, for instance, down at Hotel, turn 7, I believe it is. You're braking in a straight line and you need to slow that car down in as short amount of time as possible, as quickly as possible. And in order to do that, you steering is straight, you attack that braking zone, and you stand on the pedal to slow the car down. 10-10, brake pedal, slow it down. But you're not turning the steering wheel, so you're asking the tires to do just one thing, brake. That's all that they need to do, nothing else. There are maybe probably just one, maybe two corners here where you have that situation where you're slowing the car down as a full threshold, stopping the car in preparation for a corner. Everywhere else, you have steering input in the car as you're slowing it down. And what that does is you're asking the car to do two things. You're asking it not only to stop, but you're also asking it to turn slightly. Doing that means that you have to be very gingerly with your brake pedal because if you overwhelm the front tires, the car is not going to turn anymore. Or if you overwhelm them with lateral grip, the car is not going to brake anymore. Or if you get it all out of sorts, it's just going to spin. And so the folks that are going to have real success here are the ones that can kind of manage the balance of the car, realizing that if they needed to brake more, they will open their hands and lessen the steering input. Whereas if they need the car to turn more, they will release the brake pedal as they turn their hands to allow more of the tire's grip to be used for lateral G's instead of forward and rear G's, I guess accelerating or decelerating G's. And that's just kind of the general idea. So a lot of these really tight corners at Algarve, if you're having trouble where the car just doesn't seem to want to turn, you can't seem to get the car to turn, it's a little initially counterintuitive. try releasing the brake pedal. You may say to yourself, I need to slow down in order. The car's not turning. I need to go slower. I'm going too fast. When in reality, you may be braking too hard while turning, and the car is just going to keep going straight and understeer as a result. By releasing the brake pedal, you're carrying more speed, but you're letting the tires turn the car instead of turn and brake. And you may find yourself able to carry more speed through the low speed corners at Algarve and come out of them with more speed so you don't have to accelerate as much. So we'll go over that as we go through the track one. All right, so let's get this thing started. The very first thing I will say, I usually don't include coming out of pit lane, but this one is important because you come out of pit lane right online, basically, into turn one, and it can be a bit of a bear. As you're coming out of pit lane, the big thing to show you is we have your blend line over here on the left that then takes a weird angle out towards mid-track, towards the end. You have the blue cone in the line, which signifies the end of the pit out area. So this is, once you cross this white line, then you are effectively on track, where you can go anywhere now. But before that, you have to stay right of this solid white line, which is a blend line. When you come into turn one, you are going to be at a disadvantageous line. You're going to be super shallow relative to the cars that are online over here on the left, meaning you will not be able to take the speed through turn one's apex like cars that are already on track. What does that mean? That means that when you go through turn one's apex, you will be significantly slower than somebody already on track and coming through that just cross start finish line. The car coming out of pit lane has the right of way to this apex. So if I'm coming out of pit lane and I am slow because I need to make this corner, it's still my corner first so long as I get there first before somebody on track. So if you are coming down the main straightaway and you see a car coming out of pit lane and you do the math in your head as you're coming up there and you're like, I'm going to meet that car right at the apex, know that you have to yield to that car as though you're, that's a car on track. They're going to be slower. If you come barreling in there at normal speed and you run over them because they're 20 miles an hour slower at apex, that's on you, the car that ran into the slower car. If you are coming out of pit lane, do not yield to cars that are on track already, unless they are ahead of you. But if they're ahead of you, you shouldn't catch them because you physically can't go fast as through turn one as they can. So it's less of a problem coming out of pit lane. It's more of a problem when you're on track and a car is coming out of pit lane in front of you. Keep that in mind. So like I said, when you're coming through here out of pit lane, you're going to be coming up to speed. Use this blend line that is coming over to the left to try to open the corner up as much as you can, but don't cross it, because as soon as you cross this line right here, I'll go back to the far chase. As soon as you cross this line right here, you're on track, but you should be turning in for turn one at that point. So there's no point in crossing this line and then driving onto the racing line. That's a no-no. Don't do that. But feel free to kind of move over to about mid-track to try to open up the corner, because you need to turn right to get out of here anyway. So keep that in mind for everybody that is coming out of pit lane and then also on track. All right, let's start. Any questions about that pit lane thing, by the way? Nope? Okay. All right, so let's start the lap. For those keeping score at home, it's a cold track, 69 degrees, and I think I'm running probably about 12, 15 gallons of fuel. I'm not totally sure what it is, and I did a 42.3, so a low 42. Now, I will grant it, I was starting to feel pretty good. You can see when I went a little earlier, I was in the high 42s. So I was starting to kind of put things together and was able to get a 42.3. So let me move the camera a little bit shallower because this track has elevation. All right, there we go. All right. Coming down the main straight here at Portimao. I just want to make sure everything's good on my recording real quick. Yes. Okay, you guys can hear me in TV land. That's perfect. Okay, coming down to the first lap in Portimao, we have this dip in the road, as you can see. So we're going to go downhill, and we're going to actually be braking on our way downhill a little bit, meaning the brakes are not going to be as responsive as initially expected. However, when we turn in, we're going to be going uphill. So after our initial brake pedal and our final turn in, we're going to get really good turn in because of we're going to be going up into a hill, and that's giving us a ton of grip on the front end of this car first. So we turn in with the front tires. They've got a lot of grip because the track's helping us. We're going uphill and we're braking. Everything's good to get a really good bite into this first corner. My brake point is basically right before the dip or the ultimate compression here. So I've already started to brake a little bit. When I am racing at this track, I'm usually actually lifting at the top. So right around here, I usually just lift on the straightaway and coast into the brake area and take a nice easy brake pedal into turn one. I'm not in a rush, in other words. I'm going downhill. I want everything to be super smooth because turn one is a very fast corner. We don't want aggressive brake pedals. We don't want aggressive turn in. We don't want to upset and unsettle the balance of the car. We want it to keep it as stable as possible because of how quick this first corner is. So if I'm on qualifying, I'm doing threshold braking and driving it as deep as I can because I want every tenth I can get. If I'm in race pace, I'm usually doing a lift, saving a little bit of fuel, and then doing a nice soft brake. Here in kind of qualifying mode, I am pretty firm on the brakes initially, and then I will bleed off the brakes pretty darn quick. So as we start to go up the hill, the car is going to be slowing down much quicker. I start turning in right about this last line here. I don't like going over the curbing, and I'll talk about 3D curbings in a second, but I don't like being over the curbing. I like to keep the car pretty much on track, as you can see here. I turn in, and after I've turned in, you can see how quickly I've come off the brakes. So just a little bit of trail braking, but the idea is off the brakes as soon as I can, roll the speed through the corner and accelerate coming through the corner, as opposed to braking and trail braking down all the way to apex. If you're trail braking all the way down to apex, you're going to be slower coming out of the corner. If you're doing what I'm doing here and you are getting your trail braking done and getting off the brakes before the apex, you can get on throttle before apex and accelerate out of the corner. There's a reasonable amount of acceleration zone after this corner before we get to the first really tight corner. So we want to maximize that as best as possible. So I may be slower than some people on the entry to this corner, but I guarantee you for those that I am slower than, I will be quicker on the exit and then quicker down the little straightaway we've got before turn 3, I suppose. Yeah, turn 3. We're going to apex right at the yellow curbing here. We don't want to touch the yellow curbing. It's very large and will unsettle the car, but we want to apex it. And then as the car starts going through the apex, we want to kind of keep this steering angle pretty consistent all the way through turn 2. If we do it right, we don't really move our hands much. Our steering angle will stay almost the same all the way through turn 1 and turn 2. And you'll end up in one giant arc apexing there through turn through before we have to slow down for turn 3. So if I back it up and show it again, coming down into the brake zone, good initial pedal, turn in with a little bit of brake, off the brakes, start accelerating, keeping that steering angle consistent, all while keeping the throttle matted. We'll end up at the second apex point, and then we'll let the car naturally track out to the curbing to set up our brake zone for turn 3. This is fourth gear through here, I believe. I'll just double check. Fourth gear. So I'm downshifting to fourth gear right before the apex point, and then keeping the steering angle all the way through to the end. The tendency for these cars, or this car, is to take turn 1 too fast. If you take it too fast, well, two things. If you take it too fast, you're going to run wide on the exit and you'll pick up a 1X. You'll go over the curbing. The other symptom, or the other cause of the symptom of running too wide, would be turning in too early. If you turn in before this white line because you're like, oh, there's the apex, I need to go down to it. So if you're turning in somewhere right around here and you're too early, you pinch, you you basically don't allow yourself to go around the corner before you turn in, and you'll end up running wide, even if you're going slowly. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that the car is on a good angle. We're actually late apexing this pretty significantly. So if I actually just go straight up and we can see what it looks like. So you can see where my apex point on the curb actually is. It's on the ladder third. If you are apexing and you're apexing here on the front third, you're going to run wide. So we want the car to apex on the ladder third. The later the better, which allows us to carry more speed going through. Let's see if I can get back to where it was. There we go. Turn one's super important here, but at the same time, it takes a lot of practice and comfort to get in a good spot through there. All right, so let's assume that we got through there nice and clean. Let me adjust this so it's not weird. So if we got there nice and clean, we're coming up into turn 3. Turn 3 is our first of these really tight, super late apex corners. They remind me a lot of the left-hand corners at Coda, except they're right-handers here. Turn 3 is signified. Our braking zone is going to be, as we're straightening the car out, we're going to start braking. My feeling when I'm in the car is as the car effectively gets through turn 2 and gets almost parallel to this curbing, that's when I'm getting on the brake. I don't necessarily have a brake marker for turn 2, but that is the feeling that I get. The car gets straight, aligned with the track, then I'm getting on the brake pedal. Always keep your vision up. It's super important at all tracks, but very important here. Your eyes will tell you, and based on what you've seen in your practices, how quickly this orange curbing, which is where you should be looking, how quickly it's coming up and how far it is. And you'll learn that by keeping your vision up and looking for that curbing, you'll know what it looks like when you're braking and if you can make that corner appropriately. So your brake marker isn't a mark right here in front of the car. It is what this curbing and what this sight picture looks like as you're coming to it. So you don't need a brake marker if you're consistently keeping your vision up and seeing what the turn looks like to you. It also enables you to race better, because if you're around traffic and such and you can't see a marker on the side of the road, if you're keeping your vision up like you should, you'll see what it looks like, and it doesn't matter if there's cars around you because you know what that vision looks like as it comes in. So as we come through here, we're going to begin a reasonable brake. I'd say about a 7 pedal, but the thing is you notice I still have a little bit of steering angle in the car. My steering is not dead straight, so I cannot brake like I did for turn 1. It's got to be smoother and it's got to be softer. So I'm braking about a 7 pedal, and then I'm holding that 7 pedal all the way down to the final turn-in point, which is going to be somewhere around here towards the end of the curbing. As I turn in like turn 1, it's a decent amount of brake still in the car while I turn the car to keep the nose planted. But as I turn the car and after I do that initial bite on turn in, I'm getting off the pedal pretty quickly because I want to transfer the grip in the car from braking to lateral G's. By doing that, getting off the brake or having minimal brake on the way down to the apex, I'm able to maintain momentum. I'm keeping my minimum speed as high as I can through a very slow corner. In this particular corner, I'm downshifting all the way to first gear. I am trying to pinch the exit of the corner. Normally, if this was just a right-hander, we'd let the car drift all the way out to the left side of the track. But we're about to turn left, and this left-hander is super important. So we need to set up for it. So we'll pinch off the turn 3 and get the car, keeping that steering angle effectively in the car all the way till we get to the right side of the track. So think of track out as over here. The only way to get over here is to not go past mid-track on the exit of turn 3. Super important to get the car all the way out here to the right or as close to as we can, because we need to open up this left-hander. If we do it appropriately, we'll have grabbed second gear already. We'll turn in. Depending on the conditions, you'll probably have to do a little bit of a tiny micro lift on the way up the hill. But As soon as you get a good sight picture and you realize the car is loaded up going up this hill and it's going to have a ton of grip, then we know we can plant that throttle and ride it through here for turn 4. Turn 4 is super important to keep your steering as quiet as possible. If you know that you're not going to make the corner, it doesn't feel right, you feel like you're going to run wide, the worst thing you can do is jump off the throttle and turn more, because it's going to unsettle the rear of the car and you're probably going to spin. If you find that you're going to run wide, all you got to do is just release the throttle very gingerly, like maybe 10-15%. And the nose will tuck in a little bit more, and then you can get back on throttle and it will take a new trajectory. So no sudden movements on these big sweepers like this, because that will upset the car. The only way we can take this effectively full throttle or close to thereof is take it all the way from the right side of the track. If we're shallow, if we take this corner from mid-track, let's say, we're not going to be able to get to full throttle until we get to down by apex, where somebody that takes a better angle can have more speed going through. On the exit of turn 4, if you find that you're going to go over the curbing, make sure you commit and keep your steering pretty darn straight. If you find you're not going to go over the curbing, then you can kind of track out like I did here on this case. It is okay to go over the curbing so long as you don't put your left side tires over the curbing or touching the edge of the curb. Then you'll pick up a 1X, but it's perfectly fine to straddle. And in fact, if you're going to go over the curbing, I want you to commit to going over. Don't ride the edge of this curbing because of the 3D curbs. Yes, go ahead.
Chris, the 3D curbing, at some point we got to talk about that. This is one of the few places on the track without 3D curbing, so it's pretty easy to use. And as I read the rules, the track limit, you could go another half car over to the right if you wanted to. It's the middle of your car on the edge of the red and white curbing. Is that correct?
Yeah, I was finding on this particular... Well, first off, I believe every curbing has 3D curbing. And in fact, this curbing, I have spun on it by riding this curbing before. So be careful with that.
So curbing's an issue, but the other thing I want to point out, as you come over turn 4, once you apex, the track's falling away from you. Yet more reason why you're going to spin if you're not careful.
Exactly. And that's a good point. As you're coming into here, notice you can see a ton of the track, which means we're going uphill and it's on camber. We're going to get great turn in on the entry, but as soon as we get to apex, the track disappears. You can't see it anymore, or you can see very little of it relatively. That means it's a tabletop. So it's not necessarily falling away from you, but you're going up to a flat surface. So the grip you had on entry vanishes. Yeah. And if you lift right here because, oh my God, I'm going too wide, the car's right-hand tires don't have the grip that it had before, and you're just going to go whoop, you're going to loop it. So that's why we need to keep all of our movements through turn 4 super, super slow and no sudden movements. It's a T-Rex, its vision is based on movement. We don't want to anger it. So think of turn 4 as the T-Rex that you don't want to anger. No sudden movements. Get your steering and get your angles and your pedals all nice and consistent and smooth. If you need to make an adjustment, it's very, very subtle. And unless you're really comfortable with making the mid-corner adjustment, if you realize you're going to run wide, I'd almost say commit to it. You've got 20X. This is one of those areas that if you find you're going to run wide, just run wide. Pick up the 1X and carry on, and don't lose your momentum. Just go. Sometimes that's better than trying to make an adjustment and risk the car than just taking the incident point. All right, any question between turn 1 and turn 4? The thing I will say is to talk about the 3D curbings real quick. All of these curbings are 3D curbings, meaning it's not smooth on the back end. Going on to these curbings from the track side is relatively smooth because it's like a ramp. But as soon as you get to the outside edge of the curbing from the track, it drops off pretty significantly. And you'll notice that when you drive around here, if you go over the curbing and your outside tires go off the curbing, you'll feel the car drop over the curbing. And if you've got significant load in the car and you fall off like that, it can spin the car. So be careful. That's why I say if you're going to go over the curbing, which you can here at Algarve, make sure you commit and put that outside tire or those outside tires all the way over the curbing. Don't ride the edge because it's very unstable. So if you're going to take turn 1, for instance, over the 3D curbing, put these tires all the way over. Don't ride the edge. The one thing I don't really like to do is I don't like to straddle the curbing for opening up corners, because you will have to go over that curbing on turn in, and it's really bumpy because you're going across that harsh drop off right here, and it tends to sometimes not really settle the car, or it tends to push, like it tends to bounce the suspension around, which means it doesn't turn in like you want sometimes. I rather keep it nice and clean on the smooth edge of the curbing, so when I turn in, I know what the car is going to do at all times. But your mileage may vary. Some people are really good on curbs. I'm not one of them. Same thing here on the outside of turn 1. You can drop 2 over the curbing and not get a 1X. You're perfectly fine at doing it. But again, don't ride the edge of the curbing with half the tire. Go all the way over if you're going to go over. Don't put load in those tires when you're crossing over that harsh edge of the curbing.
A friend told me you can pick up a slowdown right there. I've never done it myself, but I mean, you can pick up a slowdown there.
if you get your right side tires like over the red, like into all 4 tires over into the green, you're going to get a slowdown.
You had 43 of them there, Lenny.
No, that wasn't me. I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, so if you're going to run wide here, again, it's like turn 4. If you're going to run wide, and you know you're going to run wide, rather than like completely tossing out turn 1 in your momentum here and like stopping the car to avoid it, just run wide. Pick up the 1X, learn from it, don't do it next lap. Unless you're going to go really wide. If you go way out here, you'll get a slowdown, and that's the punishment. Because if they didn't do that, you could just carry so much speed all the way around. So keep it nice and tidy. You'll notice that even if you run wide there and pick up a 1X, if you would have just kept it tidy, you don't travel as far. So the advantage you get by carrying 1 or 2 miles an hour more by taking a super wide line is negated by the fact that you're traveling 50 feet further. So it's kind of a wash. But experiment, see what you think. Same thing with turn 3. Some people like to take their wheels and put them over here to try to open up this corner. But again, I don't like to do that because I don't like the feeling of the car coming over the curb on turn in. So I tend to keep it really clean through here.
What gear are you in turn 1?
In turn 1, I'm in 4th gear. In turn 3, I'm in 1st gear right here. I am normally an advocate for staying as high a gear as possible. You can do turn or 2nd gear through here, but what I found is when I'm in 2nd gear through here, I tend to take too much speed, and I tend to end up too wide on the exit, and it makes it very difficult to get to the right side of the track to set up for turn 4. So by going down to to 1st gear through here, it actually forces me to slow the car down enough so I don't track out too far, so I'm able to get all the way to the right.
So finishing the apex on turn 1, have you found that it's better to be very light, or turn 3, I'm sorry.
Oh, it's okay.
Very light on the throttle because you're not tracking out. You're tracking out all the way to the right side. So it's not you have to train your brain like this turn's not over because the apex looks like it's over. You really got to kind of be easy and get over to the right side because it's so important to go through the next turn.
So, great point. So here, take a look at my telemetry. This is for turn 3. So for turn 3, if you look at my throttle right here, this is coming out where the line is. This is coming out of the apex. You can see that it's a slow, modulated throttle. It is not a brap all the way down super fast. Compare that to turn 1. When I hop on the throttle the first time, you can see how it's straight north, like boom, pretty firm. Now on this one, I went up and paused and then went up again, but you can see the difference between that and turn 3 being much smoother, right? Why did that do that? That is bizarre. Hi. Yeah, I don't know why that's doing that, so that's fun. Telemetry, display 1, display 3. Oh, there we go. Okay, fixed it. So you can see it's just much smoother. So that's really important. If you look here at my inputs and I go full speed and don't slow it down, watch this screen bar and what it looks like how slow I am to get to power. Feet
Yeah,
on,
it
feet on,
changed
feet
again.
on, boom.
It looks
did.
like that.
Oh, sorry.
extra
I'm
screen
sorry.
is
I'm
just
doing that
virtual.
again. Sorry. Go back to technical difficulty. Let's try it again. So look at my green bar here. Smooth coming up. It is not fast at all. And that's because you can't introduce a ton of throttle coming out of turn 3 because you'll shock the rear axle. You'll spin up the tires effectively. Something you'll notice when you're driving Algarve with all these weird turns and over hills and stuff is the rear is really wants to slide around. Sliding is not fast. You want to keep that rear end in check. If you're sitting there and you're noticing that like the rear is, you're fighting it and you're like oversteering and you're countersteering a bunch, you're not going fast. You want to get all the way up to the point of rear grip and before it goes away, and you don't want to cross it. If you cross it, traction control in this car is going to kick in, and it's gonna stop the fun. It comes down like a hammer. It cuts power and applies rear brakes, and the result is super slow coming out of corners. So you want to get all the way up to it, but you don't want to exceed it. And it's better to be a little bit softer on the throttle to not overwhelm the rear tires than being an ape and smashing that throttle and ignoring traction control. The other thing you can see is on the dash. When you're driving, you can see the traction control lights. So these little lights right here, these little eyebrows, they are traction control lights. So as we're coming through, if I'm losing traction, they'll start to blink. Little blinks like this are okay. I mean, you're right on the edge of grip, and traction control is actually assisting you on that front. If you're getting consistently solid lights while you're coming out and you're counter steering, traction control is ruining your day and making you slow. So you want to keep those lights on as a minimum. It's okay to, like I said, tickle them and have them kind of flash at you occasionally. That means you're right there at the threshold, but you don't want them to be solid, and you don't want the rear end to be moving around a bunch. All right. So we'll get through turn 4, nice and wide. Powering through, lots of throttle, getting a good run down the second longest straight on the track. And we come into one of the few threshold braking zones. Again, much like turn 1, we're going straight downhill when we apply the brakes, meaning that it's going to take a while for us to slow down. I akin this corner it's like a tight turn 5 at Barber if you run Barber at all. The brake zone feels very similar. We're braking pretty much at the top of the hill on the way down. And so we need to keep into that pedal, and you always brake earlier than you think. You always feel like you can go a little bit later. But if you do, you find out, oh, I can't stop for this corner. So get a really good braking marker where you feel comfortable that you can hit every time, and slow down for this corner. The second thing I like to think about this corner is I actually like to turn in early, because if you look at the track, even from way back here, you can see a lot of the track after the apex, this orange curbing. Yellow, orange, whatever. After this big curbing, you can see a lot of the track. What does that mean? That means there's camber there. The camber is trying to help us, so we want to use it. And the best way to use camber is to get down and allow it to help as early as we can in the corner. So I always feel like I'm turning in too early for this corner, but I'm not. And then ultimately, when we come off the corner, it's going to be kind of a late apex off the back third. So what does that look like? Well, my brake marker is pretty much when the track starts to fall away. It's almost threshold braking, so I'd say 9-10 pedal. And then as the car slows down, look, you can see the camber. Everything is kind of bowled into this corner. So we want to use it. So we turn in what feels like early. Feels like I'm going to apex down right here at the first part, but I'm not. And then eventually when I get down to the corner, I'm on the ladder third, and I'm picking up throttle in second gear, coming out. As we're accelerating, we're unwinding the wheel. I'm not being an ape and just slamming on the gas and letting traction control figure it out. I have a lot of steering angle. I start feeding on the throttle. As I start feeding on the throttle, the balance of the car is moving to the rear. As the balance of the car is moving to the rear, I am getting more grip, so I'm actually getting the rear differential is assisting and pushing me through the corner, so I'm getting a little bit more rotation. but I'm not doing it to the extent that I'm overwhelming the rear tires and losing traction due to too much acceleration. It's just enough to be mechanical, get that last little bit of rotation, and then as I feed on the throttle, I unwind my hands. So a trick is to think that there's a string attached to the bottom of your steering wheel, and that is attached to your throttle pedal. If you have your steering wheel turned 180 degrees, like for entry onto this corner, I can't push my throttle pedal because the string is taut. As I unwind my steering wheel, it's allowing me to push the throttle more until I get to full throttle and my steering wheel is straight because the string's down at the bottom. Same kind of concept here. So as you open your hands, you can increase the rate of acceleration and not any earlier. So right here, tons of steering angle. I hold it as I'm unwinding the steering. So I do a firm initial pedal to get that diff engaged, and then I unwind my hands, and not until I unwind my hands do I get to full throttle. You have a ton of room out here on the right. Use it. We want the car to end up here because we're driving hard, not because we're steering the car out there. Super important corner, a great opportunity to pass as well. If you're really confident on the brakes, you can send it up the inside, take that early turn in, get down to the corner early, force your opponent on the outside, and you've got the corner no problem. Turn 4 and turn 5 coupled together, you get a good run through turn 4 on somebody, and they took it shallow because they're trying to defend for whatever reason, and you take that wide line, you carry more speed through there. When you get up to the braking zone for turn 5, you've got your nose already alongside them, you outbrake them, and they can't turn down into you, and then you turn in and they're forced to stay wide, and there's no way they can drive with you around the edge of the corner. Best place to pass is right here. All right, so let's assume we got that done correctly, and we get to what I call the second first part of the course. So turn 1 and turn 2 all over again, but not quite the same. It's a variation on a theme. So we got a good little run. This is all straight away, full flat out in this corner. And oh my God, we have another fast right-hander that's like a little kink like turn 1. Unlike turn 1, this one, you're not going as fast. You're not going 160 miles an hour. You're only going about 125. But it lasts a little bit. It's a little bit more severe than the turn 1 kink. So what we want to do is we want to apex like turn 1 on the back half of that yellow apex curbing. So as we come in here, a little dab of brakes, not nearly as much as turn 1 because we're not going as fast. A little dab of brakes, tuck it in, be in 4th gear through here, and we're going to apex on the curbing. You notice that's after what you would consider a traditional apex here. So we're apexing late. Also notice, unlike turn 1, there's actually a lot of grip. There's a lot of camber that's assisting us here. There's a bowl that is catching us. So we're able to carry speed, and in fact, maybe even more speed than turn 1 because of this camber that's right here. Apex here, and like turn 1, we want to be off the brakes and starting to roll accelerator as we're going through the apex. Unlike turn 1, as we come out of this corner, turn 6, we're actually going a little bit downhill. Where turn 1, it's kind of flat. This one is actually going a little bit downhill. So the car is going to want to get all the way out to the left. Between turn 6 and turn 7, it's a little awkward. You've got a little bit of room to squeeze the throttle for a fraction of a second, but not a real reasonable amount of time. So when I'm racing and I'm driving through here, I sometimes will go through here and just not touch the throttle pedal and save fuel, and then brake a little later coming into turn 6. It keeps the car balanced. It's not totally on edge, and it makes the entry into turn 6 a little bit smoother. If I'm on a quality lap like this, I'm trying to get every 10th. So boom, I'm on full throttle through here, 4th gear, and then we're getting to that phase where we need to turn and brake at the same time. And so this is Algarve in a nutshell. We've got a little bit of steering angle still left in the car. We're trying to get the car parallel to the edge of the track to open up and give us the best angle for this corner. So you'll notice that the car is almost parallel as I can get it. But when I do my final turn in, I am parallel. What you do not see is you do not see the car pointed out to the left. which some people will do. They'll come into a little bit too shallow, and the car will be pointed out to the left as they're braking. And if you're doing that, you now have to turn the car 170 degrees to get it through turn 6. I've only got to turn it 90 degrees. So we want to try to get the car in as good a position for our final turn in turn 6. As you can see here, a little bit of brake. It's soft. Goes to about maybe an 8 pedal, 7 pedal. But I'm trying to keep the balance of the car as best I can. I'm not going over the curbing. Every time I go over the curbing here where you can do it, I tend to have to over slow the car to finally get it down to turn in. I find if I keep it on the inside of the curbing, I have a better chance to carry more speed. I will turn in. We have a lot of camber that's helping us. We're also going to start going uphill, which is also going to help the front end of the car turn. We want to use that as best as possible, so we're going to get off the brakes, and we're going to start adding throttle with a late apex to this corner. We're going uphill. I'm in second gear through this corner. As we come through the corner, we're going to open our hands, because as we start feeding on throttle, we open our hands to allow the rear to take that throttle and accelerate through. And we're going to run all the way as wide as we need to make sure we stay full throttle. So keep opening your hands, keep opening your hands. There's a lot of track out here. We want to use all of it because we want to get to throttle as soon as we can. And if you do it right, you'll end up somewhere right here about halfway over the curbing. This is not a 1X. So let's go back and look at that again without me starting and stopping it. So coming up to turn 5, we kind of get to this little tabletop, brake, off the brake, roll the momentum through here, try to get the car even with the parallel with this curbing, brake in a straight line, as straight as we can, even though we have a little bit of steering, do our final turn in, then get off the brakes and try to roll our momentum, start adding throttle, unwind our hands, and start adding throttle until we're full throttle all the way through. All right, coming up to turn, 8? Turn 8, flat out. Should be no problem. Make sure you take it from a wide angle if you can, but even if you have got a car out here and you got to take it from mid-track, you can still take it flat. 100% flat all the way through here. It should be a relatively no-brainer. The main goal through this corner is we want to put the car about mid-track to set up for, in my opinion, the most difficult corner on the track because it's completely blind. As we come up the hill, we can't see anything. I mean, I go to cockpit view. Where does the track go? There's nothing out there. You can barely see the tops of trees. Use these trees as guides as you come up the hill on where you want to put the car. You've got 3 convenient trees. You've got little spaces through these trees. Use them. Think of if you play golf and you can't see the green, what do? You get up to where you can see the pin, and then you look at the tree line or power lines or something back behind the green out in the sky, and then that's your pin all the way top. It's the same thing. Figure out where here you want to aim the car and where you want to point it, so when you come over the hill, you've got a good sight picture and you're ready to see it as soon as you cross the top. So for me, it looks like I like to see this tree over here on the left as my, so between this tree and this tree, the left 2 trees. So you can see what it looks like again. So this is my tree that I'm looking for. As we turn in, the brake point is going to be right at the crest of the hill. Just before we're going to get off the throttle, let the car crest the hill. It's going to be light. There's not going to be a lot of traction in the car as we crest this hill and we start turning. So you can't just slam on the brakes, emergency stop, because it's going to completely upset the car. So what we need to do is we need to slow the car down as we're cresting a hill. The best way to do it, just get off the gas. As soon as we get off the gas, the car is going to start decelerating. We're still going uphill too, so that's going to help as well. So we want to kind of roll into this corner. So roll into it, not a very firm brake pedal, about 5 pedal, and then as we get over the top of ridge, then we can get on the binders really hard when the car settles and gets over the hill. We're now on the tabletop. Now we've got the grip back in the car. We can get on the brakes pretty firm, but we're still turning the car. So we have to compromise. Do we want the car to brake really well, or do we want it to turn really well? Well, if we get a good angle based on our vision of the tree and the up over the hill, and then when we get over the hill, based on where we place the car, we can add more braking to slow the car down by opening our hands. If we're not at a good angle when we crest that hill, we're going to have to turn the car and use less brakes. So we're using the grip to turn to get it on a better angle than the brake pedal. There's lots of lines through this corner. There's not one hard and fast, this is the way you need to take this corner. You can take it shallow, you can take it wide. There's advantages and disadvantages to all of them. And then there's a million ways to go through it between those. On this particular lap, I took a wide line because I wanted to carry my momentum. But it's usually not what I do during the race. In the race, I tend to be more shallow because I want to protect the inside from attack. So if you take a wide line, this is kind of what it looks like. You come up over this hill, you brake just before the crest, the car is going to be tracking out. It looks like it's going to be going into the middle of nowhere, and the track is over here, but that's okay because we're trying to get the car over to the left side to do a final turn to the actual apex of the corner, which is over here. So it's like the previous turn or the previous right-hander, just a little faster and a little blind. We come through that corner, right? And then we still got a little bit of steering angle in the car, and then we've got to try to get the car parallel to the curbing before our final turn in, because we want the angle of the turn to be as minimal or as little as possible. If we're pointed all the way out to those trees and we start to try to do our final turn in from there, we're going to have to turn the car 170 degrees. We want to try to get it over to like 90 degree turn as opposed to like 120, 130 degree turn. So we get the car over here, get it turned in. Notice I have almost no brake in the car, just a little bit to keep the nose engaged, to keep the front tires to have a little bit of grip. And we want to do a super, super late apex through here and pick up throttle as soon as we can because we have a little bit of a straight on the way out. You can take second or third gear through here. Depends on what you like and how fast you're going through that apex. If you're taking a super wide line, you can take third. If you're taking a shallower line, second's probably better because you're not going as fast. Your mileage may vary. Feel what feels good to you. Like the previous right-hand turn that we did before turns 8, so that would be 7. We're going to run all the way to the edge and use all of the track. Left side tires over here. This curbing is relatively friendly. Open up the track. As we come down the hill, it's very similar to the other hill, the other left-hander that goes through here, except we can't get all the way over to the right, but we don't need to. So we get over as far as we can, which tends to be about mid-track, maybe a little left of mid-track. And this turn isn't as severe as the previous one, but it's still completely flat out. But we want to treat it as a turn because if we don't, we will run out of room on the right side. Hands are quiet. We're not jumping. We're not like, getting off of throttle and upsetting the balance of the car at all. We're keeping it smooth, keeping it planted. Opening our hands as we come through this corner, and the car will should end up all the way over here just left of the curbing. As soon as the car kind of gets over there and gets parallel with the curbing, boom, that's when we brake. So it's like go through, unwind our hands. As soon as everything's straight, boom, brake. And it's a very, very firm brake. It's like a threshold brake. 9-10 pedal. Right on the edge of ABS. We're going to brake, slow the car down, and then super late apex. Super late apex. Notice how far on the corner the actual yellow curbing is. That's where we want the car to be in apex at. Use these things to your advantage. They're here for a reason. They show the driver visually where they probably should be. Not here, back here. Super late. I like second gear through here. It helps me carry my momentum. Release the pedal, start adding throttle. You have to be ginger with your throttle through this corner because the rear end will spin up and you're coming through an area where there's camber and then it gets to a tabletop with no camber, like turn 4. As you come through, the rear end really wants to kind of chat and move around and come out. Open your hands as you're coming through here. Use the steering angle as a way to add more grip to the car. If you're like this and you add too much throttle and the rear starts to move, just open your hands and you'll notice that the car will kind of just slide out. You're trading real estate for grip. And you've got a lot of real estate out here, so you can add a lot of grip by opening your hands. After this corner, we're going to set up for the penultimate corner. Get all the way over to the left, or as far as we can. You don't need to get all the way over here if you're all the way on the track right, but if you can get over here, it's advantageous to you to open the corner. And probably the most difficult brake zone, well, other than that previous one that was the most difficult, second hardest brake zone, or most difficult brake zone. Because you can't really see your brake, you can't see where you're going, you're blind. So you really kind of have to find secondary areas of where you want to brake. You can use the curbing, the start of the curbing. You can use the grass. The paint here is probably too far. I tend to use the RPMs. So I go all the way up to second gear, grab third, and I'm only in third for like a heartbeat, and then I brake. And it's my rhythm that tells me when I need a brake, because my vision is out here looking for the curbing and the apex, not over here. So I'm in third gear, downshift to second, coming through here, turn in, everything is off camber. This corner is designed to eat tires and make the car super unstable. So we need to be patient. It's like a double apex or a carousel, if you want to think of it that way. We're going to get down to the curbing. The car is going to kind of drift away from the apex curbing because of the negative camber that's in the track, as you can see. And then the goal is to get down to the final apex, which is way around the corner, right about here. We're at full throttle. The track comes back to us, so we're losing that negative camber. In fact, it's going to become on positive camber on the second apex, which is 3/4 of the way around the corner. Our eyes are up. We're looking down the track for the apex curbing. We're full throttle, keeping our hands nice and quiet, straddling the curbing through that corner. We come to the final corner. We're going to turn in, straddle the curbing to open it up as much as possible. I like to turn in towards the end of this curbing. That's kind of my guideline. I'm looking out here, but my peripheral vision sees when I'm about to end, or my turn-in point is basically as this curbing is turning to nothing. So I'm going to turn along that line right there. Turning in, my vision is basically right at the apex or the top of this hill. That's where I want to put my car. I'm going to be in fifth gear, so I'm going to do a little short shift right here. And you have to modulate the throttle. You can't just mash the throttle and expect to go through here. It's very delicate. So on your entry, notice, have a ton of track we can see. You can actually see the angle of the track at the top of the ridge of the hill. This is all helping us for initial turn-in, but as soon as we get to the crest of that hill, it's all going to fall away. So it's imperative that you have a good angle in a late apex coming through this corner. Early apexes, you're going to run wide all day long. And the best way to avoid that is to make sure you get a late turn-in, which is right here. Use this curve to your advantage. As soon as I figured this out on this curbing, it made this corner so much easier. Turn in, full throttle through here. You may have to do a little bit of a lift before you get to the curbing. That's fine. And then just ride it out. You want to keep your hands super quiet through here because the car is going to be absolutely on edge. If you do it right, you'll end up right here on the edge of the curbing for the end of your lap. I know I went through the second half of that track pretty quick because I realized the time, and this is a very complicated track. So I wanted to at least get through it within the hour. But I'm going to show the track at speed from the cockpit so you can kind of see what it looks like. And then we can go through any of those corners in more detail if anybody has questions. So let me go to the cockpit. Lap 8. Here we go at full speed. So coming up to turn 1, we're going to brake on our way down the hill. We're going to get off the brakes and get on throttle as soon as we can with a late apex. So brake, turn in, off the brakes, throttle. Consistent steering angle all the way through. Get the car all the way to the left, brake, downshift all the way to first gear, late apex, only mid-track. Get the car to the right, second gear, early shift to third. Keep that throttle planted, quiet hands. Coming up to the hairpin, we're going to brake. As soon as I see that curbing, boom, brake. Early turn-in. Results in a late apex. Opening our hands as we add throttle. Like turn 1, we're going to do a little bit of a brush of a brake in fourth gear. Downshift to fourth. A little bit of throttle, brake in a straight line, turn in, Open our hands as we add throttle. Move the car over to the right. We have plenty of time to get a nice wide entry. We want to be at about mid-track. We're going to look for that tree in the distance. There it is. Point the car there. Brake. Carry the momentum off the brakes. Back on throttle. Opening our hands for the grip. Turn in. The car's going to move all the way to the right side. As soon as it's straight, brake. Second gear. Super late apex. Add the throttle. Open our hands. Grab third. Brake. Turn in, downshift to second, look for that super late apex. There it is. Add throttle, open our hands, go over the curbing. Go to the edge of the curbing, then do our turn in, early shift to fifth, and ride it out. It's trying to fight us, but we're nice, quiet hands all the way through. And that's how you do a 142.3 at Algarve. Any questions? There's got to be.
I do have one question. So what is it? 14? Turn 14?
Okay.
The turn before the last turn. Yeah, that downhill section
Okay,
right
that
there.
downhill.
So you're going through this turn. What's your best advice? Happened to a friend of mine, got undercut right there, and then you're stuck. You're stuck on the outside if somebody runs up the inside while you're racing, and then they brake hard right there, and you're both stuck. So, in a race scenario, what's your best line through there?
So my first question would be how. So did they follow you through this corner? You went to go
they followed
online
me through that
and they just
corner,
dove it.
and I'm on this line.
Yeah.
Except they went inside and then broke really late and went slow, but now I'm stuck on the outside, and it's a very tough scenario to be in.
So what I would do is if somebody was like behind you and then they took a shallow line to try to beat you to the corner, is I would brake early. Brake early, let them go sailing by on the inside, right? Odds are they're not going to be able to slow the car down enough to get down to this curbing. So they're going to run deep. When they run deep, you just over under them. So you brake early, turn in even earlier, and just kind of ride the curbing. They're going to drift out because they took too much speed in, and then you're just going to go underneath them. And
Well, he got lucky and broke it just perfect on a line that you would not normally take.
Yeah.
And that's a loser attitude to let him have it, Chris. We'll not have this.
Sometimes if they're able to do it and make it stick, the way I think about it is hats off to you. I couldn't do it. So
Chris, you can do it because it's a straight shot, so you're not turning when you're braking, so you can brake more efficiently just before that right-hand turn.
for sure, and you can
it's
do it
doable.
if you brake straight. But the problem is that your angle, you still have to turn the car. So the only way to make it work is you brake and you park the car right here to finally get it to turn.
You do compromise both, but you can still win that next right-hand last turn.
You can.
Yeah, see, that's the problem that you run into is that, yes, you're absolutely right. They are slow through that right-hander because they have had to brake because they're at a shallower angle. However, you're either stuck behind them, you can't win on the outside, and because of the way that corner is, it's tough to get a run at them unless you do, like you said, like really brake early and try to get off of them a little bit and get a much better run off of them.
The other thing you can do is if you see it's going to happen or you have somebody behind you that looks like they're going to make a move coming out of this corner, don't move over. Leave your car here and take it from a shallower angle. You don't have to be all the way on the left, as I said. It's advantageous if you're in a qualifying scenario because it opens the corner and you can take another mile an hour or two faster. But you can effectively, if you're racing, take the corner from mid-track. And they're not going to be able to dive you. They're not going to go all the way over here to the grass and try to outbrake you into this corner. That's suicidal. Maybe they will. Who knows? But if that's the case, if I got somebody right on my tail and I don't want them passing me here, I'll just take this line right here, and I'll just take a shallow line in. And
That is such a tough line. Have you tried that line before?
Yeah, I have, and that's why I know I can make it. But if you move over and they take it, then you're in the situation you are. If you're here and you take the line and they put themselves over here because it's the only option, well, now they're in your shoes and they're going to have to wait on you because they can't drive around you. So, it just depends. If you don't want to get past here and you see somebody behind you that looks like they're going to make a move, put your car where defend basically, and don't allow them to take it. If you see that they're behind you and you think that let's say they're faster than you, let's say they caught you, right? They were 5 seconds behind you 3 laps ago, and they've caught you at this point, and they're obviously faster than you. The other thing you can do is you come out here, get over to the left, and just lift early, coast a little bit. Let them get by you effectively and take this corner as fast as they can, and then follow and tuck. You're basically saying, hey, go as fast as you can through this corner. I'm not going to make it difficult on you because I don't want us both to lose time. And let them go, and then tuck in behind them, and then follow them through. That's the racecraft side of it. Of if I fight them tooth and nail, we're both going to lose time. Yeah, I might ultimately win the battle, but I'm going to lose the race war in terms of time to everybody else. Or concede the battle, but I'm minimizing my time lost in the actual race itself. That's what we struggle with.
It was against somebody that was, relatively the same speed to my friend, not to me.
Yeah.
And then, he just did not a dive bomb. I mean, it's a legal pass, but it's a tough situation. But I didn't think about braking early, so that might be because you could get them down the straight if you broke a little early and played that game.
A lot of the corners here at Algarve with these really tight corners it invites a dive bomb, like Coda. It invites a dive bomb for somebody to try to brake super deep, super shallow, and park the car on the apex. It's really difficult to do, and it's really slow. You counter that if somebody tries to do it to you by slowing it up and taking a later apex and over-undering them on the exit. You're going to have more momentum. You're going to have more speed coming out of the corner because you're accelerating through it. You've delayed the turn, but the advantage of that is you are able to get on throttle sooner because you have a wider exit. Where they're going to be still braking, you're accelerating, you're just going to drive underneath them in the gap that they create. And that's how you counter those dive bombs, is you just drive underneath them once they're coming away from the corner. But in certain scenarios, I mean, hey, the proper way to make a pass like that is you dive them and you park it on the apex. And when they come to make the over-under, if they didn't time it right, the only way they would effectively do it is drive through the rear of your car. And if you can time it right, you slow them up too to your speed, and you've completed the pass. So that's the strategy as the passing driver is you're offline, but you park it, you get by them effectively and then park it, and they can't drive through you. So they now have to be your speed. So that's racing. That's racecraft. Otherwise, it'd just be your parade laps. So it's knowing when to defending effectively to reduce the chance or the likelihood or the appetite of the guy or gal, the passing car to make that move, or let them get by you and follow them because it's not in your strategy to fight. So that's kind of the things we have to think about when we're driving, is the pace of everybody around us and where we want passes to happen and not. But no, great question. Absolutely fantastic question. All right, more questions. There's got to be more questions for Algarve. This place is...
Yeah, 30 minutes in, my tires were shot on the right and left side.
Right and left side. All the tires were gone.
No.
They were all gone. That's it.
Left side, sorry.
Left side tires. Yeah, no, that makes sense because most of the corners are right-hand corners. If your tires are shot, you're overdriving the car. This track is not easy on tires, but you should be able to do an hour on a set of tires without having to change. If you're burning through your tires, that means a couple of things. You're asking too much of your front end. I'm guessing it's that front left tire is the one that's taken the biggest beating. And
it was the most, but the rear wasn't far behind it.
Yeah, well, you're asking the front tire to turn you in these tight corners that you're braking and turning, so you're putting all the weight on that one tire consistently over and over and over again. And then when you come out of the corner, you get on throttle too soon, and you're putting all your weight on that left rear tire, and you're asking it to do all the work. And so you've got 4 tires, but you're only asking 2 tires to do the work on all these corners. And there's so many corners here that are both high load, last 2 corners, high load right-handers, and then you've got those really tight right-handers where you got to kind of really slow the car down while turning. And all of that is putting tons of energy and stress into those tires, and that's what's burning it. Abnormal wear is an indication of overdriving. You're driving in too deep, you're asking the car, you're telling the car, I need 110% of braking right now to get this car to slow down and turn it. That's going to burn the tires. How do you alleviate that? Try thinking of, I'm only going to ask 95% of the tire to do this. So brake a little bit earlier, but brake softer. When you turn in, don't crank the wheel, be gingerly. Like, don't just go 0 to 100 on the wheel. Try to roll into it. Think of rolling into the accelerator, rolling into the brakes, rolling off the brakes. Everything is, we want to hit every degree. We don't want to just go from 0 to 100. So every degree, you're just going to kind of roll in it. And I can actually show that with the telemetry. If I do this, let me know if it's not doing it properly. So if we go into turn 7, 8, notice like when I'm going to the brakes, this is the turn 7, it's the kink. I am kind of rolling onto the brakes and rolling off the brakes. Going into turn 8, which is the tight right-hander right here, or if I actually speed that up, you can actually see what it looks like. Far chase. So turn 8 right here. So if I go into turn 8, you can see while I have a good initial brake to slow the car down, when I'm turning into the corner, notice how my brake pedal is trailing off pretty significantly, but it's a nice smoothish brake pedal release. Same thing with my, do I have steering here? Steering angle. You can't see it because my little thing is a little off, but yeah, that's not gonna work. If I bring it over here, you can see. Let's do this. So here's my steering angle. My steering angle, where if the line is right on the big fat black line here, it's steering is straight. As I turn in here, it's a gentle turning motion. It's not a vertical line of 1, 1. Nice and smooth, nice and smooth. Everything needs to be smooth. Throttle application, as we come on, it's not a direct, it's not like here when I decelerated, which is just jumping off the pedal. It's a smooth adding throttle when the car has grip to give. I'm not overwhelming the tires. So if you're finding yourself burning your tires up too much, it's because you're asking too much of them. So be gentler, be softer. You'll find you'll probably go faster too. Because I guarantee you, if you're burning your tires off, you're entering traction control a lot. Traction control is hurting your speed. And then on top of that, you're also putting too much stress on the tire. So think of it another way. If there's anybody that does autocross, when you're doing autocross, you're only out there for 50 seconds or less, and it's super tight turns, and you're trying to brake as late as possible and turn as hard as you can. And you always think of, when you think of autocrosses, Volkswagen GTIs that are tripoding. They got one tire in the air, right? They're diving into a corner and turning, and that unloaded rear tire is in the air, right? Tripoding through. It's putting a ton of stress on the turning tire that is opposite of the tire that's in the air. Great potentially for getting that turn in for a 40-second race. Terrible for any longevity on the tire. What we want to do is, we have 4 contact patches on the car. We want to use all 4 contact patches as best as we can. If we are braking and turning at the same time and putting all of our weight on that front left tire for a turn like this, we're taking all the weight off the right rear tire. So that contact patch is just along for the ride. Think of the car as tripoding. It's not actually tripoding, but think of it like that. I would much rather have all 4 contact patches on the ground and that right rear tire doing something and helping me have grip to go around that corner. And the only way I can do that is by not stacking all the weight on that front left tire. I need to be gentle to keep that right rear tire engaged. Think about that when you drive around the track, and you might find yourself having better tire wear.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Great job as usual, Chris. I got to bail to the EDE. Pro Club guys, there's an EDE and Prelude tonight. It's in the main league.
Yeah. If you guys want to go to the EDE, there's the door. Go practice some of the stuff that I've been talking about. If you want to keep talking about Algarve, hang up and we can keep talking about Algarve.
Hey, thanks,
Great
Chris.
work,
I really
Chris. Thank you.
appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. I'm going to stop the recording as well because I want people to be able to have some sort of digestible video. So if you're watching in TV land, thank you so much for watching. 2 weeks, we'll do another one.